everybody's already here. It's great to have everyone.
Yeah, nice to see everybody.
Yes. I guess we'll go ahead and get started just so we're running on time. We've already got quite a few people who've joined us, so that's really exciting. Um, Great. So I'd love to thank everyone for joining. I think this is a really important topic, and I'm really happy to be talking to Beth about this today. So, I'd just like to introduce myself. I am Kristen Vitale. I'm a researcher and educator specializing in animal behavior. I work with cats and I study cat behavior and the cat human relationship. I've worked with cats living in homes, cats living in shelters, and free ranging cats. But usually I'm looking at it from the perspective of the cat. So I'm really excited today to look at the other side of the equation, and that is the human perspective. So, Beth, I'd love if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Beth Bigler, and I am a pet loss grief counselor. I work with individuals and couples and families before, during, and after the loss of a beloved animal companion. And it was the death of my own soulmate cat, Arnie, that led me into this path of wanting to help others move through this terribly difficult time in life. And that's what brought me here and brought me here to you, Kristen. So I say thank you, Arnie, to that.
Yes, definitely. And I guess I kind of want to start by, saying the cats that have made the most impact in my life so far. And both of them are two cats that I've lost. Oh man, I'm already choking up. I thought it might last longer than this. But the first is Cecilia here. She was, can show it here. She was a cat that when I worked at my first animal shelter job, she came in with her litter mates and they were orphans and they needed bottle fed. So I brought her and her litter mates home, and she was the only one to make it to adulthood. And unfortunately, I lost her when she was only 7 years old. And we still don't really know what happened. So that kind of compounds the grief a bit, not really knowing the circumstances. But she made a huge impact on my life. She was the first cat that I trained, the first that I did a lot of things with. So I'm really appreciative of her. And then my other cat, Macy, who I actually lost this summer. She was the first cat that I got, as an adult, and I had her almost all of my adult life. And so that was a different kind of grief to lose her, but she did make it. I feel like she led a long, happy life. So I'm really appreciative to have had her in my life. So I don't know if you want to share any more about, your cats, Beth, but feel free.
Oh, I would love to. Yes. For those of you who may not have seen my soulmate cat, Arnie, I'll show you a picture. Here he is, sweet orange and
So
white boy. I show this picture sometimes. I've had a lot of medical stuff happen, and Arnie was the best nurse. So here he is after one of my surgeries. There he is, best nurse ever. And the year I adopted Arnie, I also adopted another cat, and her name is Zelda. And I never talked about her as much. She wasn't really the favorite in my household. And so when Arnie died, I was sort of dismayed. What am I going to do with Zelda now? Because, he was the one. So that old Zelda, here she is, Zelda hung in there with me for many, many more years after Arnie died. Our relationship flourished and blossomed and grew in ways I never could have imagined. Here she is, also sweet Zelda.
Oh,
I'm actually coming up on the 1 year anniversary of Zelda's death in just a few days. So I'm thinking of her extra much and really grateful for that time we shared, especially after Arnie. I was very amazed at how our relationship developed and bloomed, and it was a really powerful learning experience for me.
definitely. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, I think what we'll do is jump into some of the questions. Some of you have sent me questions, so I have those on a list here and we'll kind of move through them. But if you have any questions that you'd like to put in the chat, we'll try to get to those as well. So, the first few questions are just on kind of a background of what grief is. So, how would you define grief? And are there different styles of grief or different expressions of grief?
Many expressions of grief. That's a great question. Well, in terms of how I think of what grief is, I sort of think of grief as this constellation of internal emotions and thoughts that happen in the response to a major loss, including a death, right? So, some of the emotions that come up for people in grief, of course, are pain and sadness, anguish, guilt, anxiety, confusion, yearning, anger, disbelief, shock, whole host of things, right? And
Mhm.
so the grief is what is happening inside, and those emotions happening in your mind, happening in your heart, happening in your body. Then some people talk about mourning, which is a word that goes with grief a lot. And so when we think about mourning, that's kind of like grief gone public, right? So like
Mhm.
mourning is more like the outward expression of how we show our grief. So that might be in our external behaviors. That may be crying. That may be sharing stories or sharing on social media or wearing certain clothing or any of those kind of external expressions. And of course, mourning is very important that we are able to share our grief and release it, in that way, in a communal way. So grief and mourning are two things that go together. Um, there are a couple other types of grief too that come up a lot in my work, working with grieving animal guardians. One kind of grief that some people didn't even know there was a name for is called anticipatory grief. And that's the grief that we experience when our beloved is facing perhaps a diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis, perhaps they're aging and their age is becoming a real concern for
Mhm.
us. Anytime we are sort of expecting that we are going to come to the completion of their life, sometimes that brings up a whole bunch of different emotions. In fact, some emotions that aren't as dominant in post loss grief. And
Mhm.
so many of us, if we have cared for an animal with a sickness, know that that's a real roller coaster kind of feeling with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of questioning and a lot of fear. So that's
Mhm.
anticipatory grief. And another kind of grief that comes up in my work is called ambiguous grief or ambiguous loss. And that is actually, there's two different definitions, and both can apply for animals. One of the definitions is when something happens and we don't know sort of what has become of our
Mhm.
beloved. That could be something like a natural disaster or a fire,
Yeah.
where we kind of don't know, or when an animal runs away or escapes or goes missing. That's one definition. The other definition is when we are watching our beloved change as a result of either cognitive decline or physical decline, so that they aren't so much themselves anymore. Perhaps they can't do some of the things that they used to really like to do, so we call that ambiguous grief. So if your cat used to like to jump and play and hide, and then now because of
Mhm.
a condition or because of age or whatever's going on, you're not seeing that. We often are grieving that. We are grieving who they used to be. And that's
Yeah.
another definition of ambiguous loss, ambiguous grief. So um, those are some other types of grief that come up in my work.
Wow, that hits so close to home for things like I experienced when I lost, my cats. Wow, yeah, very, very true.
Yeah, and Kristen, a lot of times we don't have
Mhm.
names for those when we're going
Yeah,
through them, so it's so powerful to like put a name, be like, oh, that is what I felt. That's grief. That's real grief, and that's part of knowing kind of what's happened is being able to name it, which I find really
right.
helpful in the work I do with people. Yeah,
Definitely being able to verbalize it, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
yeah.
So another question just on the background of grief is, do you think that grief over the loss of a cat is different than the loss of other pets?
This is such a good question. I love this question. Um, so listen, all of us, whether we have cats or dogs or rabbits or guinea pigs or turtles or rats, all of our beloveds, right? There are certain things that are universal, I would say, right? There are so many things. The feelings I mentioned before, shock and disbelief and physical symptoms and brain fog and spiritual questioning and of course guilt and regret and questioning and sadness and sometimes even feelings of relief or release, right?
Mhm.
So I think a lot of our grief feelings are very universal. When I think about cats specifically, though, there are a few things that sort of come to mind for me. And by the way, I would love to know what you think about this because you actually might have some research that would help me with some of this. There was a study that was done a while ago by the American Animal Hospital Association, and they did this study, sort of trying to figure out the difference between cat people and dog people. And you've probably seen studies like this.
Mhm.
What I found so interesting there is that dog people talked about the idea that when they felt most connected to their dogs, it's when they were basically out in the world, playing outside, going out, like exercising, games, things like that. A lot of it was very external to the world. And the cat people reported when they felt most connected to their cats is when they were petting or grooming or sleeping with them.
Interesting.
And yeah. So I find that really powerful because kind of when you put those pieces together, and I think this was in a book called The Feline Mystique by Clea Simon, she talked about how in some ways, perhaps some dog people like their dogs because their dogs bring them out into the world,
Mhm.
and that their cats are maybe more woven into the kind of internal and emotional fabric, right? So
Mhm.
thinking about that, I think there may be different sort of impacts in terms of grief, right? And I think some of the ways that might play out is that number one, because people who have animals where they're more outside and doing things outside and going places outside might have a lot more sadness around those places or trouble with those routines. Whereas, for many of us, if we have indoor cats, our cat's entire life is within our home. And so
Yeah.
that might make certain adjustments at home, and those routines might potentially be harder. Another thing about that is that um, in your social sphere, in the people who know you and love you, it's also possible if you have a dog who like goes to your office with you, who goes places with you, goes to friends' houses, more people in your world might know your dog than
Right.
might know your cat. Now, of course, this is different for everyone, but in general, you might not have as many people who've met your cat or spent time with your cat as you might if you
Mhm.
had a dog that you went everywhere with, which then, when the loss occurs, might mean there are fewer people who have memories to share about your cat or who have pictures to send with your cat, et cetera, et cetera. So it may actually lead to feeling just a little more isolated. That's possible. And I would also say, I think it is perhaps more socially the norm to think that cats are lesser than dogs in certain ways when we
Mhm.
think of companions, right? So it's like, I think some people might think dogs might be more worthy of
Yeah.
mourning than cats. I don't feel that way. You don't feel that way. But I think culturally, there probably is a, a difference. In fact, personally, when I first started doing this work, I was a little nervous because my soulmate pet, my beloved who got me into this work, is a cat, right?
Yeah.
And many people who work in the pet loss space, their major loss, their soul animal is a dog. I'm one of the few
Mhm.
people who's a cat. And I was like, will the dog people still like me? Will the dog people still want to work with me? I was kind of nervous in the beginning. And I was so pleased to find out that the dog people love me and I love the dog people, right? But I was actually very excited to learn that many people are drawn to come to me and work with me because of Arnie, because it's a cat. And they actually feel kind of safer and more understood because they have worry about stigma and feeling like it's just a cat, and that maybe it's
Mhm.
not as valid. So that's actually kind of been a nice surprise in my work, that I have been able to be sort of the one of the cat people in this field.
Yeah.
But
So
what do you
important
think?
too.
What do
Yeah,
you think about this one?
I think that you made a lot of good points, and that's something exactly in my work that, we see that people don't have the opportunities to take their cats outside of the home into social spaces. And usually when they do, it's to go to the vet or something like that. So it's not really a positive experience most of the time.
Right.
But I think what we see is kind of the internet becomes a place where people can share about their cats and like feel comfortable doing so and kind of connect with other cat owners.
Yeah.
So I think that that's like a really big part of it. But
Yeah.
also your point that, the cat's in the house with you all the time. And I mean, of course, dogs are as well. But I think that, you come home to the cat, it's just like a constant that's always there. And there's actually a question about this, basically, that, after you've lost that pet, you'll see them, out of the corner of your eye, like constantly expecting them to be there because they're always there for you. So I do think that there are definitely going to be differences like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of value, like you said, I don't think there's a difference in the value of the pet.
No.
Um, they're family members either way. So,
Yes.
but yeah, very interesting. And, in my own work, we look at that bond between human and cat, and we see that they're actually the same kind of bond formed between a cat and their owner as between a dog and their owner.
Yeah.
It's this kind of caregiving relationship. And in many ways, that caregiving relationship is akin to an offspring parent relationship
Mhm.
because you're providing food, medical care, shelter, you're providing everything for them.
Mhm.
And so, we baby talk to our cats. We do all these same kind of caregiving things. And that's not to say it's obviously not the same as having a child, but it is a caregiving relationship and it's an important one. And I think that it's all too often just like you said, discounted as just a cat. But these are real relationships. And I think when people don't have those social spaces to go grieve their pet and to,
Yep.
mourn them
Yep.
publicly, that a lot of cat owners kind of internalize that. And
Yep.
that's not such a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. So the next set of questions are basically about preparing for loss. And the first one is, how do you know when it's time to let go of your cat?
Ooh.
Hard one.
Wow. Yeah. Well, of course, in my work with anticipatory grievers, this is a huge topic of conversation, right? And I think that question means like, when do I euthanize if this is a euthanasia decision?
Mhm.
And of course, euthanasia is a medical decision, right? That's something to be made with a veterinarian. So that's not something that I really advise people either way, right? It's too deeply personal, right? And it's a medical decision. So I don't tell people when I think it's the right time because that's not my job. My job is to reflect back what I'm hearing, what I'm learning, and to help people navigate how they're feeling, right?
Mhm.
That said, when I'm approaching this question with people, my first kind of mandate is that we don't want to allow any suffering, for our beloveds. And of course, it can be hard to know how cats experience pain because we know cats are great at masking pain, but we don't want our cats to suffer. And that's something to really be thinking about. How do you feel about how your cat is experiencing their day to day life? And how is their quality of life? Can they still do the things they like to do? Can they still enjoy the activities and social interactions? A lot of us, when we talk about quality of life and end of life, we talk about, are they eating? Are they drinking? Are they peeing and pooping? And those are important things. But there are
Mhm.
other things too, the emotional, social pieces of our relationships with our cats that we want to look at and say, how is that going for them? I think something that I personally like to think about and have people think about is their animals' dignity and animals' agency. Some of our animals don't want to go through certain treatments. They make that very clear. My
Mhm.
cat Zelda, she was not going to do fluids. She was not going to
Mhm.
take, fluids would have been supportive for her medically. She wasn't going to do it. And I wanted to give her the agency to sort of let that be okay. And so I like us to think about agency and dignity. And really the key when you're thinking about this decision is to center your beloved. This is their end of life
Yeah.
experience. This is their road that they're walking to this big next milestone of life. And you know what? You get to walk that road with them. It's an opportunity. Not everybody gets that. Not everybody gets to be there in this very tender time of caring. And so when I'm working with people about this, I'm saying, what do you feel about how would you like your end of life to be? What
Yeah.
would be your criteria? And a lot of us haven't thought about it for ourselves, right?
Mhm.
And really focusing on what would make their life, rest of their life and their death great. The word euthanasia, the root words mean a good death. So we are
Mhm.
going for that. We are going for a good death. And sometimes we think we don't want to make their last day their worst day or their worst
Yeah.
day their last day, right? So we really want to just focus on centering them and centering their experience, which can be hard to do when we are going through so many emotions in our own grief.
Definitely. Yeah, and one of the comments that came up was that animals often make it known through their body language if they're consenting to treatment or not. That's a really good point. Looking at behavior and body language, is big, looking at how uncomfortable they are if they're frequently displaying stress signals, ears down, dilated pupils, twitching tail, their body's all tight. Those are all signs that that cat isn't feeling great. And that might come back to that quality of life that, would you want to feel that way? What's the best step to take for them on, like you said, on that journey?
Yes,
Very
100%.
good. So the next one is, what can you do to prepare for the loss of the cat while they're still in your life? So kind of back to this idea of anticipatory grief.
Well, when you're coming up on knowing perhaps that a date is set,
Mhm.
or that a that you know the time is soon, the first thing I would tell anyone is, let's release the pressure for you about making it this like perfect magical time. I'm going to tell you some things I recommend doing, but I also really like to help people just feel like there's, this is a very hard moment for you, for your emotions. So we want to take care of ourselves, be kind and gentle and self-compassionate with ourselves, that this period of time is going to be very hard and we may not do everything perfectly. And your cat doesn't need you to do everything perfectly. They just need you to show up and be there, right?
Mhm.
And give your best. So the first thing I like to say about this is, let's kind of try to release the pressure valve, because frankly social media has also created a lot of narratives about, do the bucket list, do the photo shoot, do all these things, which those are great. If you can go all out, do a going away party, I love all that stuff. But sometimes that's not where our beloved is. Sometimes they need to rest. Sometimes it needs to be very quiet. So I just like to kind of release expectations and pressure. That said, the things you can be thinking about leading up to this transition time is a sense of normalcy. I want all of our beloveds to have a real sense of normalcy as they go about their lives at the end, that everything is okay. I don't want us to be hovering and getting hysterical and creating more chaos and non calm. We want this time for them to be peaceful, non chaotic, calm, and really a sense of normalcy. So, like, if you normally would go to the store to get your groceries, do that. Okay. Let's give them a sense that everything is okay. Right. So, I really just like to help people find that sense of normalcy as best we can. And then, of course, if you want to do some special things, first of all, talking to them, just talk to them about what's coming. Talk to them about what they're experiencing, what you notice, what you're planning, what it's going to be like. Ask them, what kind of music might you like to have present at your euthanasia? Make a play. Zelda and I spent her final day together making a playlist for her euthanasia, right?
Mhm.
With Zelda, I'm just thinking about it because it just happened. I read to her. I read her poems. I wrote her a letter that could go with her when she was taken to be cremated. I spent time telling her memories about our life together and telling her all the ways in which I was planning to continue our relationship and the things that I would be doing to sort of be in touch with her and keep her with me, even after her transition. Right. We built an altar together. I made a sacred space for her transition and for afterward, as a place of reflection and comfort. I did some crafts. I did some painting and drawing. So anything that feels supportive to you, something you can do alongside your beloved, some collaborations with them, having an open line of communication. And I do recommend, if you are able, to have a conversation with them that this is coming. Reassure them you're going to be there. You're going to make it as peaceful and non chaotic as possible. Tell them everything you want to tell them. Tell them how much they mean to you and how much you love them. And tell them that you're going to be okay.
Mhm.
Even if you don't fully know if it's true, even if you're not sure you mean it, please
Mhm.
tell them, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to get support. We're going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. And if you have surviving animals, they're going to be okay. And that's a really powerful thing to be able to tell them.
Yeah. Yeah, again, really good points. And back to that idea of trying not to make it a chaotic time for them. We know from the research that cats can read human emotion and they can read human mood, especially their owner's mood and emotion. And so, I'm not saying obviously we're going to be upset
Yeah.
and we're going to be sad. And I'm not saying to, try to stop those feelings. But at the same time, your cat can pick up on those things. And so same as having like maybe a child who's sick, trying to find a balance between, expressing your emotions, but also being there emotionally for them, I think is really important. And I don't know if you have any advice on that. It's obviously difficult to handle your own emotions while trying to be, put on this brave face for your cat. But is there any tips you might have for that?
Well, on a very practical note, I mean, I advise guardians that I work with, hey, I want you to feel all your big feelings, express all your big feelings. It's one of the reasons we do, counseling work with it. But also, when you need to go scream in your car, go scream in your car or go cry in the shower.
Mhm.
Let these feelings out. Don't stuff them inside. I just ask that you not do it in front of your cat because your
Yeah.
cat's going to pick up on that. It's going to scare them. And the truth
Mhm.
is, we don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Kristen, but we don't think in the research that cats have this sense, that okay, in 6 days I'm going to be euthanized and I'm really scared about my death. They aren't thinking like that. They're very present. And so we want to be present with them. So if you give them a feeling that things are scary and awful, they're going to pick up on that, like you said. So when you have these big feelings, take them elsewhere, please. And that includes even on the day of the euthanasia.
Mhm.
If you have the ability, take some breaks. Like even get up and go outside for 30 seconds and have a big cry. When I was saying goodbye to Arnie, which was unexpected, I didn't have a lot of warning. I still got up and I took some time away from him so that I could cry in the bathroom and let
Yeah,
my big feelings out and release it and then come back and be present for him. So that's one thing. It's just being very practical about like having space for your feelings away from your beloved. I highly recommend starting a self compassion practice. Start really just working on speaking kindly to yourself, speaking non judgmentally, speak non critically to yourself. You have a great teacher in your cat who has never been critical and judgmental of you. So start talking to yourself more like your cat would
mhm,
talk to you. When this is going on, be kind to yourself. That's a huge, huge thing. And coming back to centering their experience is really powerful. Once you really understand that, like, I get to walk this road with them, I get to be here with them, I get to make this time special and beautiful. And yes, I'm sad and it's hard, but I get to show up for you the way you've shown up for me, our whole relationship. Once you really get into that mindset, it changes. You become much more able to be grounded and present and connected and deepening your relationship all the way up until that very moment.
definitely. Yeah. Um, so this next one was they had lost their cat at a planned at-home euthanasia, but a few days went by between scheduling this and the date happened. So, are there any things you suggest doing in those last days with your cat to have the best memory of them? So, we've kind of maybe touched on this. I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think thinking about like what would make you feel most connected with your cat. What would you like to do? Is there anything that you haven't done with them in a while that you would like to do if they feel up for it, right? And again,
Mhm.
in this tender last few days, a lot of cats don't feel like doing much, or some cats don't feel like doing much, or they're on a lot of meds. So again, go at your own pace. But I think it's really fun to go through old photos, go through like, if you got them when they were little baby photos or early days photos. I love telling them the story of their life so that they can hear more about all the adventures you've been through. I love, if it's comfortable for you, taking pictures, taking videos, making some memories with them. And if there are people in your cat's life who would like to say goodbye, I really encourage you to call them in, have them come in on a Zoom, have them over, have them pay their respects and say whatever they want to say to your cat. That can feel very supportive if it feels supportive to you. Again, it's tough to know sometimes what feels supportive and what doesn't. Also, if you're worried about leaving your cat alone, I would recommend have someone come and sit with your cat who wants to spend some time with your cat so that you can go for a walk, get a break, get out of this space, even just for a half hour, so that you can kind of help reset and get your mindset kind of back after a break, because our brain needs breaks in grief and particularly in those last days. So some of those things combined with some of the things I said before would be recommendations for the end.
Very good points. Okay, so the next few questions are basically during the loss. And so, what are ways to reduce pain during euthanasia? It hurts so much to see them go. So, again, I think we've touched on this a little bit, but if you have any other thoughts.
Do we think this is a question about reducing pain, like for yourself, your emotional pain?
I believe for yourself, yes. Mhm.
Look, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. I don't know that we can reduce our own pain in this
Mhm.
moment. I think that's kind of a big ask. To the person who asked this question, I appreciate the question.
Mhm.
I think like telling yourself, I'm going to find a way to reduce how painful this is might be asking too much of yourself. That might be setting too high an expectation.
Mhm.
I think perhaps the thing to say to yourself is, this is hard. This hurts. I'm going through something really hard. I am brave. I am strong. I can show up for my beloved the way they've always showed up for me. Before before we said goodbye to Arnie, when I would go in the bathroom to cry, after I would cry, I would pep talk myself in the mirror. And I would say,
Mhm.
you can go in there and you can do this and you can be strong for him. He's always been strong for you. You can get him through this. You can get yourself through. I mean, I really would just kind of talk to myself like that to try to keep myself level. But the pain, the pain is very hard. And sometimes when we're in deep pain, we do things we don't expect or we say things we don't expect. And our brain is going through so much in this moment. I think the number one thing, and I don't want to be a broken record, but you'll probably hear me say it again, is self compassion. Just being so kind to yourself that this is hard. What you're going through is hard. This is so major and so difficult that whatever you say, whatever you do, whatever you don't say or don't do, be kind to yourself. The one practical thing I would say, kind of on this note, is if at all possible, please have your veterinarian or the in home veterinarian, if you're doing in home euthanasia, whoever's doing it, really walk you step by step through the procedure, exactly what's going to happen. This is something I do when I work with anticipatory clients. I walk them through exactly kind of what to expect piece by piece. And for many people I work with, that is very comforting because
Mhm.
you have kind of an idea of what to expect and there's not as many unknowns. And so I tell the people that I'm working with, I go through it with them and I say, have your doctor go through it not just once, but twice. So you can kind of think in your mind, I know what's going to happen next. I know, what I want to say when. Something very practical that I'll say here is that, many people don't know that the first shot that's typically euthanasia is usually administered in two shots, not always, but
Mhm.
um, that for many cats and dogs, that first shot, it's a sedation, but for many animals, they're very knocked out. They are very deeply sedated in a way that makes guardians feel like the animal's not really there anymore. So, like,
Mhm.
one thing, hey, make sure everything you want to say when you want to have that connected eye to eye moment, that you say that before the first shot. Because, for example, some people don't know that, and so they don't get to kind of have that moment, right? So,
Right.
for me, I don't know if this reduces pain, but it reduces the unknown. It reduces your chance of kind of feeling like things happen that you weren't aware of and you didn't know what to expect and how to plan for them. So definitely, that is something that's so important to kind of walk through it in your own mind. What do you want to be happening? Do you want music? Do you want a ritual? Do you want to read a poem? How do you want to set it up? And then, really make sure you understand the steps that will be taking place. I think that can do a lot to help us manage our expectations and set ourselves up for success, even if it doesn't completely reduce the pain.
Yeah. Mentally, you can be so much better prepared when you know what's going to happen. That is such a good point. And then I guess on the flip side, the last question during the loss is, what can I do to best support my cat during the euthanasia? So again, we've maybe touched on this a bit, but if you have any other thoughts.
Reassure them.
Mhm.
Be calm, soothing, loving, talk to them, thank them. I have clients of mine sometimes prepare mantras, things to say over and over. That, like I know for me with Zelda, I was having a hard time finding words, but I thought about what do I want to say, so I just said over and over, I said, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I love you. Thank you for everything, and like when I couldn't reach for anything else, I could go there and kind of come back to that mantra. So I think they can hear you, they can smell you, they can feel you. All their senses are so present and activated. And some of them, even after that first shot, they have a lot of sense about
Mhm.
them. Know that you are with them. They can feel you. They can hear you. And so just fill them with all that love, all that good feeling you want them to take with them, all the reassurance that everything's going to be okay. And I think that's like the kindest thing we can do. And just remember that they are experiencing you as you are. And so that's the you we want to bring to the table, is the
Yeah.
most reassuring, loving pieces of ourselves.
And a point you made earlier, that, they were there for you. My cats were always there for me, and my current cats are still there for me whenever I need them. It's like they know, and they'll be on me, snuggling and purring. And when I need them the most, they just know. And
Mhm.
so I think, you're returning that favor to them, and sending them out in a way that is respectful of your whole relationship with them.
We
So
could
important.
never, ever in a billion years repay them for
Yeah.
what they've done for
Yeah.
us. It would be
Mhm.
impossible. But I do think this act of being able to show up and give them as good a death as we possibly can, if we are lucky enough to be in a planned euthanasia scenario, which not everyone is, then we've got to just dig deep and really push ourselves to make it as good an experience as possible. That's one small thing we can do on that repayment front.
Definitely. All right. So the last section here is basically coping after the loss.
Mm.
And I want to start with a question that this person lost their cat last week. And so I just want to send out a special, thought to them that we're thinking of you. It's got to be really hard right now. But their question is, how do you battle with feelings of not having done enough for your cat? There's this ever-present question of, could I have done anything differently? Could you have done more? So how would you suggest someone navigate those feelings?
Well, first of all, just for this particular questioner, 1 week out is so hard. That's virtually no time in grief. And we really don't view this type of grief as like a physical injury. And that is how I view it. So, you are hurt, you are wounded, you aren't even in triage yet, right? You are wounded. And so, resting and nourishing and hydrating are absolutely essential right now, even if you do nothing else. And rest, I say, because your brain, your neurons are trying to absorb so much change and adjustment here. You're depleted in your energy. You're going to be having physical symptoms. You may be having headaches or heart palpitations or stomach trouble or anything and everything. So in that first week, and the first weeks, just being so gentle with your body, gentle with your time. This isn't the kind of thing where we can just keep going and get back into our normal routine. It's going to be
Mhm.
impossible. And so, just on that front, week one, I just really like to stress rest and nourish and hydrate. So, that's a week one thing. Guilt. Um, Guilt is one of the number one things people come to me with. It's a very hard thing to feel. It's a very hard thing to work through alone. And it's always a hard question to answer in a forum like this, because the reasons why our guilt comes up and the ways to work through it are really complex. However, I can say a few general things about guilt. It's very hard when we have assumed total responsibility for our cat their whole lives, and everything about them has been a decision that we have largely made. When they die, regardless of how or why or circumstance or what we tried or what we didn't get to try, many of us just feel like it's our fault. It's on us somehow that they died. Now,
Mhm.
that may not be true, but that is often how we feel. And so, one thing with guilt, and I'm going to say it again, self compassion, really working on your own self compassion. And you can start that by doing self compassion meditations. You can start that, the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, who is sort of the world's pioneer in self compassion research. She has excellent books about this. Really being kind to yourself, because a lot of times our guilt is not necessarily because we actually did anything wrong. It's a feeling that we did something wrong, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it helps to talk it out with someone who's objective, to be like, okay, here's what happened. I feel like I did something wrong. And maybe your friend or family member can say, but I can't find the part where you did do any wrong or where you did cause any harm, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes our guilt has a lot to do with hindsight bias, or what I like to call, you didn't have the crystal ball, right? So we didn't know things were going to turn out the way they did. We didn't know that cough we were hearing was going to turn into something else. We didn't know that our beloved was going to die, right? And so, had we known that, we might have done things differently. We might have tried something else, but we didn't know. And so much of the time, we feel guilt about things that simply were out of our power. And
Mhm.
that's an important thing to recognize. Another important thing to recognize is all that you did do. Our guilt tends to get really hung up on things we didn't do, and we like to get really focused on, you know, what we didn't do this, we didn't do that. But start talking to yourself about what you did do,
Yeah.
because you did so much. You did
Mhm.
everything. In fact, most of us do every single thing we can think to do or know to do with the information we have at the time. We are almost always doing the very best we can, working with what's in front of us. The problem is we just can't always see what's coming.
Yeah.
So that's another big thing, is just really getting into what you did do. Also, for some people, guilt is about control. Sometimes it feels safer to find a way to blame ourselves than to believe that bad things can happen, or that our cats can die suddenly, or that something unexpected can come out of nowhere and just, wreck your life.
Yeah.
you know, Sometimes it feels safer to think I must have had something to do with it than that, like, bad things can happen in the universe. And so some people kind of default to that. A
Yeah.
lot of how we experience guilt has to do with, like, what we were taught about guilt growing up, messages we got about shame and blame and all kinds of things. When there's things, a lot of things impact the way we experience guilt, including our critical voice. But starting with self-compassion, kind of objectively looking at the situation and figuring out, did you actually do anything wrong or cause harm? Figuring out what you did do. Those are some good places to begin.
Yeah. That's a really good point. So there was actually a question in chat I want to get to from Mike before we move on. Um, have you found it common that your other cats open up or show a change in personality following the loss of the other cat? I've watched my otherwise introverted cat start acting like my departed. That's very interesting. I can say that there is barely, if any, research on the loss of a companion cat on other household cats. But what I can say is we know that companion cats in the same house are definitely paying attention to each other to the extent that they even know each other's names. So they're obviously, forming very strong bonds with one another. And I have personally seen when my cat Cecilia passed away, my cat Macy would like walk around the house and do this very distressed cry for a long
Yeah.
time, almost like she was searching for her. So I have seen behavioral changes in my cats following the loss of a cat. But we don't have any research. It's greatly needed because the social lives of cats are just has been ignored for so long. But is this something that you've come across in your work?
Yes, and let's do the research, Kristen. Let's go, because
Right?
anecdotally, I have hundreds of examples of this with clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it did happen to me too. And but the most kind of mysterious piece is the one where our surviving animals take on the traits of the animals who died, and that is completely inexplicable to me. It's astonishing
Yeah.
every time a client tells me about it. It astonished me when Zelda started doing it with Arnie, and I had two kittens when Zelda died. I had two kittens, and one of them, the night she died, went up and did a whole routine that she used to do every night. He just did the same exact thing. So there are
Yeah.
so many things about that I have seen personally and that clients have told me about. Also, personality changes, blossoming. Like I said about Zelda,
Yeah.
her person, she was introverted, then she became a lot more extroverted, a lot more social. And certainly, I mean, I don't need research to tell me that they grieve. I mean, we see a lot of these things: vocalizing, searching behaviors, wanting to engage with certain things, wanting to not engage with certain items, right? Seen that. Every time when we would talk about Zelda, the kitten's ears would pop up. They want to, they
Yeah.
were for Zelda.
Mhm.
So I have just seen this over and over, and I would love to get some actual research on it. But I know anecdotally at this point, we see so many interesting changes, shifts, and definite kind of personality kind of transfer things that I'm absolutely blown away by every time I hear
Mhm.
about it.
And actually, now that you say that, I hadn't thought about it, but my cat Macy, who passed away this summer, she was really big on bedtime. Like that
Yeah.
was like a whole thing, coming to bed, getting on the bed, getting pet, purring, doing a whole thing. And after she passed away, my cat Kevin is now big on the bedtime routine. So that is so interesting. I hadn't thought about it, but it's so true.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. Isn't that
Yeah.
fascinating? What is that about? amazing.
We got to figure it out. But yeah,
Let's
really,
figure it out.
really
I'm ready.
interesting.
I'm ready. Cats are so
Yeah.
amazing, and this is one that I've just heard it now so many times that I believe deeply that it's true. I don't know why, but it's true.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, so another question about after the loss is basically just coping with the loss because you feel like you've lost a member of the family. And this was something that I have experienced. You know, you come into the house and you think you see them on the couch or you think you see them out of the corner of your eye. How do you deal with that? You know, the feeling not only of losing them, but constantly thinking of them and then maybe feeling that loss, over and over.
Well, that has to do with your neurons who are deep in the routine of spending so many hours a day and so many routines with your cat. And it's not something that our neurons can turn off right away. So,
Mhm.
of course, it's going to happen to us. And sometimes when it happens to us, it doesn't feel great. What I like to tell people about that is that every time you get that little, oh, I think I see them out of the corner of my eye, or oh, that's where they used to love to lay in the sun, or there's one of their favorite glitter palms, right? To take that opportunity to connect in with your beloved. So to take that opportunity to say, "Hey, Arn, I see that glitter palm. That is just one of your all-time favorites because that's a red one, or whatever." Or when you see the sun, being like, "Isn't it a beautiful day to lay in the sun?" What I don't recommend saying is, "I'm so sad you're not here to be in the sun. It feels so awful," right? Because that's going
Mhm.
to take
Mhm.
down more of that sadness and the guilt. But my a lot of if you follow my Instagram, right? I am a big believer in continuing this relationship. That this is a relationship we continue to give and receive from. So the way you talk to them before, talk to them like that now. When you see them out of the corner of your eye, say, "Hey, thanks. Nice to see you. Come again." Right? Anything you can do to keep connected to them is awesome. And that's something you can do every time those little moments happen where this would be bedtime, right? When bedtime comes in, you'd be like, "Okay, Macy, it's bedtime.
Yeah.
Kevin's coming in to fill in." But we all know this is
Mhm.
her favorite time of day, right? That keeps you connected to her, connected to that ritual, and makes that a little less painful for you when bedtime
Mhm.
comes. So that's a big thing on kind of the daily routine. But of course, other stuff, feel your feelings, allow yourself to feel your feelings, understand that whatever's coming up for you, whether it's anger or blame or jealousy or comparison or um, you know, feeling numb, whatever it is, it's valid, it's allowed, and really just feel like it's okay to express those feelings. Find a safe place to express those feelings. Find a safe online community like my Instagram. Find a safe person in your life. But find a way to really be able to express your feelings. Find ways to memorialize your beloved. Do nice things for them, whether that's have a memorial service or find some jewelry that you want to wear or have a sort of an honoring celebration of life for them. Anything you want to do to honor them, memorial them, get a portrait painted, all that kind of thing, that can feel really, really supportive.
Mhm.
And being gentle and kind with yourself. This is a death as valid and profound as any other death of anyone you've ever experienced, human or otherwise.
Mhm.
So treating yourself kindly in the way that you would if this were a parent or a child or a friend is paramount. So don't diminish your own grief.
Yeah.
Feel it and allow it to be valid, and allow yourself to do whatever you need to do to feel supported in it.
And something you said actually reminded me of something I've been experiencing, which is dreaming about my cats that have passed on. And I'll wake up in the morning and feel like they visited me and, try to feel that appreciation. And I think that's something that's helped me, like still being able to see them or feel their spirit in some way still connected with me. So I'm not sure if other people often dream about their pets, but it's something that happens for me quite often.
That's so incredible. Yeah, I think we would call those like visitation dreams, right? Where
Mhm.
you feel like you really got to visit. And sometimes that comes with a message or a feeling, which is so awesome. We always want to say thank you, come again when those happen.
Mhm.
Also, people anecdotally experience signs, right? They feel like they receive certain signs from their animal in numbers, in electricity flashes, in certain animals, in certain letters, and so many people experience feeling like they're getting some little winks from their beloved. So in
Yeah.
dreams, one way, and signs are another way. And again, an area where there's not hard research on a lot of this, but anecdotally can't be denied at this point. it's
Yeah.
it's happening to all of us a lot of the time.
Definitely. Um, just a few more questions here. One is I've been made to feel stupid by others for grieving my cat. Like my cat isn't worth grieving over. What do you think about this?
What do I think about that?
Yeah, I
uh,
know.
my question for anyone who's experiencing that, right? Because that's very painful. It's very
Mhm,
painful when people are dismissive and invalidating of your grief. You know, when you are made to feel unworthy, my first question is, well, who taught you that? What are the facts? And is that true? Right?
mhm.
And the answer is it's absolutely not true. Our cats, for many of us, is the most intimate and loving relationship in our entire lives. And their physicality with us, their proximity to us, their understanding, their loyalty to us is unmatched, even with people. And there is research on this, right? The way we feel about our animals and the way we feel about people, right? There is no question that your grief for your cat is as rich and as deep as and as important as any other kind of grief. And they're woven into every single part of our daily routine, unlike many
Yeah.
people, right?
Mhm,
So our neurons are responding to that, but also emotionally we're responding to that. They are there for us when no one else is there for us. They are kind to us when other people aren't kind to us. They believe in us. They support us. They get us through the hardest times of our life. And they also never lie to us. They never betray us. They never have unrealistic high expectations of how we should be and who we should be. They
mhm,
are healers. They are teachers. They are protectors. And that is by far more profound and more important than, for many of us, any other relationship in our
mhm.
lives. So if anyone is making you feel invalidated or unworthy about grieving this beloved family member or soulmate or child, however you refer to your cat, whatever that is for you, they're wrong. That's
Mhm.
wrong. They're just flat out wrong.
Yep.
And how you feel about this is supported by research and also supported by the millions of grieving animal guardians, that are
Yep.
all around the world. So if anyone's ever made you feel that way, you come over to my Instagram and honoring our animals, and you're going to find a whole bunch of us who feel like you feel, who get you, who understand you, and you're not going to feel invalidated ever in my community. That's how I feel
Absolutely.
about that.
Yeah. Very good. All right. So we've made it to the last question that was submitted, and it's on pet memorialization. So, what are some types of pet memorialization that you've heard about, and what was your favorite way you've heard about memorializing a cat?
Oh my gosh, there's just so many amazing things. I mean, first of all, Etsy is like our best friend for any grieving guardian, right? It's so incredible. There's so many ways to do this. So, obviously portraits, jewelry, different items you can get with your beloved's names on them. I just got two new bracelets made with Arnie and Zelda's name. I'm so excited about them. I actually have a couple things here. Some of you, here's my AirPods, right? So I have my little AirPod case has for Arnie and Zelda. That's how I honor them on my AirPods with my cats. I have some shoes I had made in their signature colors. So these are Arnie's signature colors and Zelda's signature colors, and these are shoes that I can wear so I can walk around with their names on them. I
Mm,
love choosing signature colors for your animals because then every time you encounter something orange, which is Arnie's color, you are in connection with them. So I love, if you didn't even have a signature color for your cat when they were Earthside, it's never too late to pick one. So, like for me now, I just choose so many orange objects when I have a choice because they remind me of Arnie. There's all kinds of cool things. These are some of my favorite things. I got these made for Dia de los Muertos last year. These little beautiful
Oh,
sculptures to put on their altars, and they're
oh,
all
I love it.
so. I have a guitar for Arnie, and this is his favorite toy, the glitter palms. And there's a succulent because he's from California. Here's Zelda's because Zelda loves morning doves and milk and avocados. So there's
Oh,
Zelda's, her signature colors. So these are so incredible. So, what I say to people again, it's really about what feels good to you, whether that's making a scrapbook about their life or writing a story about their life or wearing things that remind you of them, or just doing daily little things to honor them. Something that a lot of people love that I sort of started is this idea of using their name when you go to Starbucks, right? So
Mm,
when you put your name in for any kind of takeaway food order or coffee, use their name, because guess what? Then they shout it out in the middle of Starbucks. They're going to
yeah.
shout out Arnie. And is there any better word in the English language than your cat's name? No. So that's like just a little thing you can incorporate every day. Also, doing little kind of acts of kindness, and putting some legacy into the world can also just
Mhm.
feel super supportive. So whether that's, buying the coffee for the person in line behind you, and having the barista say that's from Arnie, right? Or,
Yeah.
or doing a donation to a shelter, for a bunch of glitter palms for the cats to use in the kitten rooms, right? Whatever it is, just spreading that love. Our cats have given us so much love, so much inspiration, so much joy, so much play. For me to authentically be, representing that in how you honor their legacy is so powerful. Right. So, however you want to carry these gifts, guidance, lessons, and teachings that we were so lucky to receive while they were Earthside, and that we can continue to receive now, however you want to carry them into the world is powerful, and it's empowering, and it keeps us connected to them, and it keeps them connected to the world. So that's one of my favorite things to do, is to just continue to bring their legacy into the world with gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, gratitude. It's a big one for sure.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I don't know if you have any last thoughts. Those are the questions that were submitted.
Awesome. No, I mean, my only other thought is that anybody who's watching or watching on replay, please do come over to my Honoring Our Animals Instagram community. We have so much going on over there. Every month, I do a memorial service that you can submit your beloved's name to. And I do a little service where we can remember our beloveds. I read every guardian and animal's name side by side. So it's a really gorgeous way to publicly honor your beloved, be in community, and take some time out of your month to celebrate them. So please, come over, submit to that each month. We do that, rain or shine, every single month. I do also have a newsletter. If you want to head on over to my website at honoringouranimals.com, or you can click on it on my Instagram bio. If you have anticipatory grief or post loss grief, I address both of those things every single week, in my newsletter, to try to give support for any grieving guardians that are on either side of things. And of course, if you're interested in working with me, please reach out. I would love to do a consultation with you. I have lots of different ways that I work with people. And if I could bring you any support as you move through this, I'm here for you. I get it. And I am passionate about helping people move through this very, very challenging moment in life and emerge on the other side feeling deeply connected to their beloved. And I can think of no greater honor than to help people do that, and to carry Arnie's legacy by doing
Absolutely.
that. So
And
come check it out.
you are definitely doing that. And I will say I know some people who have gone to you and they talk you up and have said how much you've helped them. So I really encourage anyone who's struggling to seek out Beth. And I'll make sure to put links to your social media and website on on the description of the stream for anyone who's watching the replay as well. But
Awesome. That's fantastic.
I would like to just thank everyone who's here and everyone who participated in the chat. There was some really beautiful discussion going on in the chat. It was really respectful. So I just want to, say to everyone, I'm sorry for everybody's loss. I think probably everyone who is here has lost a pet or, especially a cat, and is obviously still dealing with that grief. So please know that we see you, and we're here. So please seek out help if you need it. But thank you so much for joining, Beth, and everyone else for joining the chat.
Absolutely. Have a great night, everybody.
All
Be
right.
well.
Bye.